people waiting outside? One more that they just passed SB 40 Florida,
No,
and I want us to add that. I'm super afraid for North Walton. Oh shoot.
my brother was public works director in Elk Grove Village, Illinois, which yes,
And good, we are, it allows us to, it overrides SB 180 and we will, yes, so I want to make sure we do that, yes. Oh,
working on it.
Just so I remember myself. I like to sit next to you.
Attico?
He was here.
He was at the workshop.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, no, he was here last month.
It was like here last month. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I had all the playoff games for softball. Now they went to down to state. They played. They're rated ranked number one in the state.
What sport?
Baseball.
Oh,
They're ranked number one in the state. They're ranked number
are they 5A, 6A? God, they're babies.
was a small school.
Yeah.
But
okay, I
anyway,
didn't realize that.
I've gone to all the playoff games at home. Tom went with me.
We don't.
Oh, we're waiting. I think
We've
we're
got
waiting
Clay's
for Clay.
coming, and are do Karen?
I'd be in
Come.
traffic.
He'll be. Yeah, he'll be.
Traffic was really bad.
Was.
Like, get out of this house.
I know. Well, I know. I was talking
Well, I came way. So,
Kyla, Allie got into med school.
where's she going?
She's going to Pecan, South Georgia. Yes,
Crazy.
totally scrambled.
Well, I'm very jealous because I went
Yeah.
through that process 50 years ago.
It's
and-
a big deal. She's tried for 3 years.
yeah, that's why
So
I
it's huge.
I went down that same
You
road.
did. I was telling you because
Yeah.
I knew that you would.
Still have to, I mean, when I was applying,
Yes,
I was going broke applying to med school.
it costs money to take the tons of money.
I was
It's such a scam too.
My parents were not wealthy, so they had work.
Yep.
And then once I got enough money, I heard he was on his way, but I'm guessing.
In med needs.
That's what she did
Internal medicine
too.
and pediatrics.
That's what my niece did. She has a clinic now and the hospitalist in it. Colby, I don't remember. He was gonna retire. I mean, he's 70s, but he flies out there once every 6 weeks. Part owner of this hospital.
Listen, it's out, but I'll tell
Exactly.
you what, it's between.
So what does
not-
she want to do? Well, and
She
that's
might
just
have to go
it.
internal med and
A lot of
away into the
times,
arms.
yeah, that they want to get into.
school, and then the next rotations.
Linchpin is here, so we pretty much. Right now, we haven't even done. All right, we're gonna get started. Rise for the pledge and for a prayer.
We come before you today with gratitude for the opportunity to gather, to serve, and to make decisions that shape our community. We ask for your guidance as we consider the plans set before us. Grant us wisdom to see clearly, discernment to weigh what is right and just, and humility to listen to one another with respect and understanding. Amen. All right. First thing on our agenda is approval of the April minutes. Do we have?
And to approve.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Abstention? All right. Then we get right into our legislative session, which isn't much, but
Good evening. The legislative items, both the Land Development Code text amendments and the EAR-based text amendments to the comp plan, we're requesting continuance to the June 11th hearing. Hopefully, after tonight, if we can get through it all, there'll be enough time to bring any changes back to you guys, so.
okay, do we have a motion to continue these two items to the next meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Next, we move on to quasi judicial.
We do. Okay, sounds good. Okay, item number 4, under the quasi judicial items, Hotel Rain and Inlet Beach, there's a request to continue to the June 11th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to move it to June 11th, Hotel Rain.
Second.
My only discussion is, and it really doesn't matter, is this at the request of the applicant or is this a planning department issue?
It's kind of a mutual across-the-board request. There are some amendments to the neighborhood plan that have been discussed when there was a discussion of a Scrivener's error that affected this specific project. Agreements were reached between the developer and the representatives of the neighborhood or the neighbors, I guess we should say, who will be voting on the neighborhood plan. There's a neighborhood plan amendment that is being proposed. They needed some additional time to go through the actual advertising process for the plan amendment where they send it out to all the neighbors. That is in process and it's coming along quite nicely. I believe the vote happened 2 weeks ago, or the initial vote happened right at 10 days ago. So because of that, the board will need to adopt this. I think it is premature for you to address this issue under a neighborhood plan that is likely going to change, because some of the questions that might be raised as part of this issue deal with the current version of the neighborhood plan and will not exist under the revised version of the neighborhood plan. So we may have to go back through the same hearing after that change anyway. So that's why we want to go ahead and just save you from hearing it twice.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Clay? So you're telling us that they have agreed to make an amendment to their neighborhood plan, and that's what we're waiting on is the final?
That is part of what is occurring here, yes. Okay. What is happening is, so there is language that is inconsistent in the neighborhood plan with that we discussed. Mm-hmm. The board discussed addressing that as a Scrivener's error. That would allow this to move forward, no questions about that. The neighbors expressed additional concerns that if we were to modify that provision as proposed to conform and to correct the Scrivener's error, that what ends up happening is it opens, proverbially, Pandora's box to additional problems. So, as I understand, and I've not been part of those direct meetings or conversations, but as I am told by both attorneys for the neighborhood and for the developer, they have come up with a solution that would allow a limited amendment that would prohibit hotels of this nature in wide sectors of the neighborhood plan while preserving this area that has not typically been part of the neighborhood plan in the way it is scoped and developed commercially. So this would not be subject to that old restriction, but that restriction, but that broader language would now not exist elsewhere in the neighborhood plan.
Okay.
So it seems like a best of both worlds scenario is what they were aiming for. I will eagerly await their final version of that language, though, to confirm that.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Now we need to swear in.
Anyone wishing to speak on the remaining item on tonight's agenda that is the quasi judicial, not the workshop item, needs to be sworn at this time. Please stand, raise your right hand, repeat after me. I do hereby swear or affirm the testimony I present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. And just note, I believe that's the applicant and staff are the only members sworn.
Yes, thank you. All right. Stephen.
Okay. This is item number 5, the Holiday Inn Express. This is a request to approve by final order. It is project number MAJ 25-000053. It was reviewed by Ayana Reed, and I'm going to ask Ms. Reed to come up and review it for you. Thank you.
Good evening. Item number 5, Holiday Inn Express. This is a request to approve by final order, project number MAJ 25-000053. This is a major development application submitted by Nautilus Civil Engineers on behalf of Sunrise 850 LLC, requesting to develop a hotel with 104 rooms on 2.57 plus or minus acres. The project site has a future land use of mixed use and a zoning category of village mixed use. The property is in District 5, located on the north side of US Highway 98 West, approximately 0.195 miles east of Don Bishop Road, and approximately 0.249 miles west of intersection US Highway 98 West crossover and Musset Bayou, and is identified by the parcel number in your staff report. Before I enter the staff report into the record, if I may, I would like to add a couple of corrections to the staff report. That item was presented to the clerk and to the board in front of you, if I may.
Okay.
So I would like to add a couple of corrections, and I'll explain these as I get into my brief presentation on why this is coming back to you today. So in the project description, there's a slight change that was added to what was advertised. It is 104 rooms, which includes 103 standard rooms for the commercial component, 1 extended stay suite for the residential component, and a public pocket park to meet the recreational component on page 2 of that item in front of you. If you flip to the next page, the other correction I'd like to add to the staff report that will be presented to the ALJ after this process tonight is on page 4, and it is for the proposed conditions of approval that will be added to the final order. It would be letter E, where the site design must include the following to satisfy the mixture of uses requirement for LDC section 2.02.23.G.7, where the residential use requirement will be satisfied by providing 1 extended stay room. The commercial use requirement will be satisfied by the hotel use as originally proposed, and the recreation use requirement will be satisfied by adding a public pocket park in the northeast corner of the parcel. Now may I add the staff report into the record, please?
So entered.
Okay, so my explanation for adding that information was that if you look at the history in the staff report that was uploaded for this evening, this project was approved by this board on December 11th, 2025. There was no public opposition, no comment letters received from the public. And then the project moved forward to the ALJ on March 26. Staff did find that this project, in the original proposal, wasn't quite meeting the mixture of use requirement in that code section that I mentioned earlier. So before the administrative law judge closed the hearing, we made the decision to put a halt on that and resend it back to Planning Commission after we had an opportunity to meet with the applicant and have a conversation about the mixture of use requirement in village mixed use. So this is why these things were added. Under the new site plan that's proposed tonight, if you look at Exhibit 5 of the staff report, it does show how the applicant's change to the site design meets those specific requirements of the village mixed-use zoning code, or zoning requirements. So we just felt that it would be best for us to, instead of making that final decision, to take a closer look at this, work with the applicant to figure out how we can get this up to compliance with that specific requirement, and then bring this back to you all tonight for hearing. So besides that, if you don't have any other questions for me, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, as far as the planning department is concerned, your interpretation, you assume that these changes meet the requirement of the zoning?
Yes, of the mixture of uses.
So you're saying that a extended stay room is a residence? I think you're pushing the limits of what is intended in that zoning. If you don't like the zoning, change it, but this does not meet it, in my opinion.
And I do acknowledge your statement, Jim, but in terms of the final legal interpretation of that, I would rather turn that over to our land use attorney and Stephen, our planning
Yeah,
director.
The other thing is that the recreational component, a public park, which is a bench, okay. I don't see that meeting the intent either, so.
I was wondering how this was meeting the zoning as well, and it is technically meeting it, but this is a little crazy.
I might add that the timing is very interesting, given the extensive discussion we had at the public workshop on this specific zoning district.
Right.
So I can understand the concerns in terms of how the county interprets those requirements and whether this reconfiguration on the site design piece could meet that. And I'm confident that the applicant will definitely be able to speak to that a little bit more. But in terms of that final interpretation, we felt that it would be better late than never to take a look at that a little deeper to make sure that we're being very specific in this application as to how we're interpreting the requirements for the recreational component, the commercial component, and the residential component.
So as far as our discussion tonight, are we going to focus just on this issue, or are we looking at the whole project again? I know that there's been some changes, right?
In terms of the mixture of uses,
Well,
yes, and you technically would be looking at the entire project again.
okay, so we may have some questions.
You may.
It's okay.
If I could just briefly add, potentially to approach some of your questions, concerns, and also what Ms. Reed indicated, right? VMU, as we discussed last time, is kind of a mess of a zoning district. So historically, we've done what we could to adhere to those standards that are nebulous at best, right? So previously, we've allowed for manager suites, extended stays, other sort of dwelling type uses, even just a single unit. You know, the Porsche dealership is one example. I think there's some marina that we've also looked at, or a boat commercial. Yeah, I forget the name of it, but while I certainly agree that it brings pause when you're talking about these sort of things, the code doesn't give any sort of maximums or minimums, so we've always tried to do our best to make it fit into the intent of creating, for all intents and purposes, as a mixture of uses on a site, right? So additionally, these sort of little pocket parks and things, while, yeah, they probably will not get a lot of use from the general public, it is a passive recreational component, which the code speaks to.
You mentioned the Porsche dealership. What
Yes.
is the residence requirement there? Is there a,
There is a manager's suite above.
that's what you call a residence?
No, they did. They went through a variance process. Did they? No, they went through a variance process to get rid of the manager's suite. They stuck with the public park, if I'm not mistaken, or the park. I don't remember the rezoning, but I mean, it's entirely possible. It's been a couple of years. But there's other developments that instead of going through that variance process, went through and just added that sort of suite, right? So I just wanted to put that on the record. Not that not that it satisfies your concerns, I'm sure, but
So
just
why wouldn't we go through the variance process with this?
the applicant chose to provide what has been done in other situations.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're done with staff questions. We reserve the right to call you back.
Good evening, Curtis Smith with Nautilus Engineers. I didn't bring the presentation or anything up. I have it. If you all want to see any of that stuff, we did review this last time. Didn't have any complications last time until we got to the end of the QJ meeting, and then discovered that this doesn't technically meet the verbiage of the code. So we're back here. I will say, you know, I spoke about this at the workshop. This is something I've dealt with on several projects, including South Bay Lumber, Hunters Road Hotel, which is a Fairfield. Gregor Marine dealt with it, and we were part of that with the South Bay Lumber. Avid Storage, I believe, dealt with it. There's several projects that have had to deal with this particular component. So I'm hopeful that we can address that component of VMU as part of these code updates. But as of right now, we got to the very last second of the game and didn't finish at the magistrate meeting. So we're here to kind of correct those errors. And that's, if you guys have any questions, I mean, I have a lot of opinions on that code section. I don't agree with it, but we have to adhere to it. So that's why
So
we've done
how did
this.
you, since you mentioned South Bay Lumber, how did you get by that? Or that's still hanging out there?
A security guard's quarters. There's a security office in the back. It's not built yet. They're still working on that project.
Okay,
But
so there'll
it,
be
you know,
a security guy
dealt
living
with it.
there, huh?
And the recreation component was teamed up with Gregor Marine and dedicated the entire frontage of the roadways to public uses up there. So, you know, I think 100% of the cases, it could be a little less than 100%. Myself and other engineers have had to find workarounds for this code provision that was added in 2019. I'm not happy with it, not happy we're here about it, but we're here.
Right. Okay.
I think we found something that's reasonable and it works and, you know, meets the code language. The pocket park there on the corner, yeah, that could actually be used by some folks. There is residential right behind this. There's an apartment back there, and they actually use there's a little, almost like a miniature creek back there. I think it's technically a mosquito control ditch, but people do use that, and they have a little park area on this property that they keep cleared, and they use it from that. We probably could have justified that as a recreation component, but we went ahead and added the picnic table. We do know that the site to the east was bought by the La Chulapita Mexican market. They plan to build a new one there. They can use that park as well. They're patrons. It'll be free and open to anyone to use.
Any other questions for Curtis?
I have one more. You make the statement in the application that there will be a cross-access easement,
Correct.
and I've talked to a couple of the not owners, but people that are businesses in those two strip malls.
Mhm.
They have no idea. They never agreed to anything. I guess that must have been agreed to
Yeah,
by the owner.
It's the owners of the strip center,
And
correct.
do you have that in writing?
We have several emails with them. We actually have the final draft of that right now that we've got to execute before the development. It's a condition of the development to execute that easement, correct. Yeah. We would do the easement no matter what. The Public Works requires us to do a one-sided easement if we don't have agreement from the other party, in case something in the future comes. In this case, we found them and reached out directly, and we're actually building the cross-access. It doesn't exist on their property, so the easement covers building on their property.
I don't know if you're familiar with Don Bishop Road, but if you add people going through that strip mall to go back onto Don Bishop Road to head east on 98, it's a nightmare. You can't get across there. You have to go right, you have to go west, go down and make a U-turn. That's existing now. Now, what's going to happen when we put 150 apartments that aren't built yet, that are there at Sugar Drive in 98? Those people are going to be wanting to go that way. I mean, this is going to be a logistical nightmare from what I see, and I don't,
I think we talked about this, I think, the last time
Yeah.
we had this, and that will probably be an area that might be looked at for a signal at some point in time
I
at
hope
Don
so.
Bishop, because it does have a left turn
not
there.
Don Bishop, at Musset Bayou and Sugar. That has got a lot of,
Yeah.
I mean, you got,
So in the case of this project, the cross connectivity, what it does help, is people that go to the strip center no longer have to U-turn on the 98. They'll turn into this hotel and go to the strip center. The same with the Mexican market on the east.
well, there's already
we-
a turn there.
There's a
already-
turn, but it doesn't go into their driveway. They have to U-turn to get in their driveway. Our driveway is lined up with the left turn now. So that's going to take traffic off of 98 by giving them a way to go into the slip lane connecting, cross connecting. Same with the Mexican market. When they build, instead of having to drive down a U-turn, they'll turn right into the hotel and connect that way. So it does help traffic.
So you can share your public park with the Mexican Mart, then that'll,
Anyone, I mean, anyone can use it.
okay.
Yeah, technically, it's open to everyone.
Any reason you didn't try to get it rezoned?
Honestly, we didn't know this. We got to the very end. We didn't know that this was a problem until Tim Brown
I think
discovered
this is
it
my
toward the
whole
end.
issue with village mixed use.
Well, I can give you other examples. We're not here for the other examples, but there are other
I know there
examples
are,
that have been
and that,
approved
I just
without
think-
this
I
component.
get it.
But
I know,
Yeah.
that's why I'm not even sure, I'm not sure that needs to be a category of zoning. I think we.
hopefully we'll fix that.
Yeah,
But tonight,
hopefully.
we're asking to,
I know. It's a
get
hard
these
thing.
folks
It's
through this
really
project.
hard to make a determination when this is not the intended project for village mixed use. I mean, that's not what the intent of it is. And so I wish we were voting on something that was a commercial situation. It would be a slam dunk.
I would actually say, based on the information that I presented at the workshop, that it was intended. Village mixed use, and the comp plan actually still reads this way.
It may have been that specific area was meant to be village mixed use, but this is not what village mixed use was intended to be, is a hotel with a bench and one long-term unit. That's not what the intent is, and that's my issue with village mixed use, is there is a intention to it, and this is not it.
General commercial, the way that the comp plan currently reads, as well as the LDC used to read before 2019, in my mind, was very specific that it was intended for commercial uses. It provided an allowance for residential as long as you provided a commercial also. Then we changed it to require the residential.
I get it.
That's
I
what it was.
totally get it.
Yeah, the thing
I
is,
totally do,
this-
but it makes it hard right now for us in this situation. I mean,
I agree, and it's not you. I
It's
mean,
not.
you're under a,
Right, we got stuck. This is about the
This-
fourth hotel, and suddenly we got stuck with the issue,
Yeah, no.
So,
were the other ones village mixed use as well?
Yes.
Mm.
True by Hilton. We did this same thing on the Fairfield Inn. we had this issue and we did it, you know, we
Have to
did,
fix this.
correct.
Okay, let's keep going.
All right, well, we see I do have somebody in the audience that would like to speak to this.
Raise my hand to swear, so I want to do everything the right way. I
Want
apologize.
to swear?
All right. I'm sorry.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. I've been dealing with a lot of issues, obviously, through the years. The pre-application process is extremely important, and maybe Stephen can address it. Who actually is sitting with the developers, looking at the zoning category, seeing if their project fits in that? Is it just a planning aid? I don't think it's a staff person. But to hear that Curtis didn't even realize this, that it got up to the magistrate, something is wrong. It's not the zoning category that's wrong, it's the process. And I think if we looked a little harder at pre-application, and maybe Stephen can address who is doing that, and just kind of stop the issues at that point. So thank you. And you're right about rezoning too, to solve some of it. But
So in terms of our pre-application, I'll say a couple things about it. One, we're going to have to see some what I would call substantial changes to that process based on House Bill 927 that I think the governor just signed into law, which makes us create some additional processes and really hone in on the what I think Ms. Marana indicated as the importance of the pre-application process come January 1, I think, right? That's when yeah. So we'll be seeing some changes to that coming forward as well. But just in general, the pre-application process is designed to do one thing, to let the applicant know what they need to submit to make a development order application, right? The code says whatever's said in that meeting doesn't matter, whatever staff says in that meeting doesn't matter. It's meant as an informational meeting to provide the applicant specifically what they need to do to submit, right? So you need a survey, you need a site plan, you need, your EA, those sorts of things. So rarely do we get into the details of the development. If the applicant has questions about, hey, does this buffer, we think a buffer needs to be here, can you tell us if it does or not? Like sometimes we'll get into that sort of, detail, but that's really not the intent. It should be in many ways, but that's not how we've historically handled. That's not what the code requires. So just, again, we're probably going to be looking at some changes and really beefing up that process, so.
Right, any other questions for staff or for the applicant? We'll close the public comment, since you're the only public. I guess I'd entertain a motion.
Yeah, I would move to deny because I don't think this meets the intent of the code, of the
Are you
zoning.
making a motion, or are we going to discuss first before we go that far?
Well, he made a motion, we can, if there's no second, then it dies.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what happens is, even though we deny it, it'll still go to the ALJ. And the ALJ, if I'm a judge, and I look at this and say, that is what is meeting the intent, I don't think so. So that's why I would vote to deny.
I think that part of the issue, though, is that we have allowed this exact case scenario so many times previously. We have to fix the circumstances, so I'm not sure it's fair to penalize this particular project. That's just
Well, it's not-
something to consider, because really, I think that this is what has been happening, and it's, I think, not something that should have been happening.
I don't think you can base a decision on precedent. I mean, that precedent and how you comply with the law, I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Would you
So-
like them to have more of a village mixed use? Would you like it to be more conforming to, is that what, tell me, you think that, we don't know if it'll get, I don't know, tell me what your hesitation is.
Well, look at the mixed-use zoning and the words in the mixed-use zoning. What's being proposed here, and I have nothing to do with Nautilus. I mean, they're doing what they need to do. They're doing what they were kind of instructed to do, I think. But,
I know, I get it. I'm
One
very
more-
conflicted.
well,
I'm very
and
conflicted.
I can tell you that ALJ, when they look at it, I don't think they're going, whoever it is going to be conflicted. So, I mean, what we do here, if we say, yeah, we approve it, so that means we go down the line. Everybody that has reviewed this project has now approved it, and the ALJ is going to sit there and look at this and go, how the heck did that happen?
But I think they've approved many others that are very, very similar.
Okay.
Let me just comment, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. Your job is to base your decision based on competent substantial evidence. The burden rests on the applicant to present his case. He has, staff has presented its case. The uncontroverted testimony you have heard today is that this is consistent with the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan based on the prior application of this type of situation in this district. I don't opine one way or the other on whether that should be what it is or not. To your point, Ms. Drohan, you are quite correct. Fixing it is different than voting on this project. And as to whether we like the way the code has been applied and administered, planning staff are your experts. They have offered their testimony. I would note that at this point in time, there has not been testimony that has provided any different opinion on that point.
Thank you, Clay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, the motion dies for lack of a second. Do we have another motion?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstention? None. The motion passes 3-1. All right. Any other business coming before the Planning Commission? If not, we will adjourn and begin our workshop to discuss the EAR. We are adjourned.
This is a workshop, and so y'all have all the help you need right out there in their competent hands.
All right, thank you, Clay.
I can assure you that these type of items here haven't gone opportunities to hear.
I know you
this. Thank y'all.
So we are ready to start discussing the evaluation and appraisal report based text amendments to the comprehensive plan. I do too, and my iPad's being very
Yeah.
stupid.
And I would just, it sounded like you were saying, go ahead and proceed, but then I wasn't sure, so I was
Yeah,
I
we
was
need to
waiting.
proceed, but my iPad's not working, so don't know why, but. No, I can open it. I'll go through the web. It's just being stupid, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and just kind of open it up here. And start by saying that all of the proposed amendments in here, other than a few kind of minor corrections or clarifying things, are all based on the evaluation and appraisal report, accepted, let me make sure I use the right terminology, accepted by the Board of County Commissioners. So DPZ co-design did a lot of work for quite some time, focusing right on all our backup data, growth, all the issues, that I'm sure many of you remember, the week-long workshops and, all the things that we went through in order for them to prepare this report, right? So almost $1 million later, this is what the DPZ presented to the board. The board accepted it. The next step was to move through the process of amending the actual comp plan itself based on the report. So again, while some of these changes you all may not like, I'll admit that I don't necessarily like them. But they're all based on this report. And let me also say that if you don't like something, let's discuss it, right? If you don't like 50 units in commercial or whatever it's bumped up to, let's talk about it. Let's find another number to put in there. Not just, say, we don't like this. This is a starting off point, really. This is what this is designed to be. So, moving forward, just to point a couple of more housekeeping items out in the text-based amendment document. You'll see all the changes are underlined and highlighted and or stricken through. But I want to draw attention to just the regular amendments, and I say regular sort of loosely, I'll kind of define that, are highlighted yellow and or regular color. All right, the red writing, the red text, is to me, and I think my land use attorney, potential SB 180 concerns, right? So when we're talking about adding an additional thing and process or procedure or requirement that may be more burdensome, that's what that red text means, excuse me. The green highlighting is simply to draw attention to a change. I think what I've tried to do in general is things like density requirements, compatibility requirements, things that are changing in that way. I've highlighted them in green, and the purple highlighting is not necessarily meant for the committee, but more for the board and for the other departments. When they reviewed these documents, I wanted to identify, okay, this is something that's creating another need and potentially additional work for you and for the county. So those are kind of just high level sort of, just so you understand what these different colors mean. Now, I will seek some direction from you all and how you want to move through this. If you want to talk about all the things, if there's some specific changes that you want to discuss, if you want to go through them again, similar to the LDC, kind of line by line, and we can do that too. It's up to you.
What do you guys think? That was such a burdensome process. I don't really want to do that.
It was a lot.
I don't want
I
to
think
do
we
that.
need to go line by line. I think
Yeah.
we just,
I mean, I have notes. Yeah, I think we should just kind of address the things that we have
right.
That sounds like a great idea.
identified and our overwhelming concern from our citizens who've come out in force today to discuss this. It's their loss, and I appreciate Barbara for being here and Curtis, so thank you very much. Let's start with the comments from the Planning Commission. I'm gonna start, because I have that capability.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the first thing is kind of a general comment. And we'll go one by one. I noted that some, but not all of the DPZ recommendations were accepted. And I just was wondering why.
So there were a couple things in here, and I'm glad you brought that up, right? So there's some recommendations in here specifically as it relates to, say, structure height. Is that one of those recommendations that you're kind of referring to?
That's one of them.
Right, so structure height, and forgive me now that I'm saying that, because I think I may have just seen where it is in here, shouldn't be. There should not be a structure height in a comp plan. That is an antiquated way to do a comp plan. This is a vision document. The LDC should be specifically to those sort of detailed regulations and standards that buildings have to adhere to. Now, if there's something that the public and the board doesn't want to be varied from, that should also be in the land development code as well. This height cannot be varied from, right? That shouldn't be in the comp plan. So let me just start with that premise.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense to me.
Okay, okay. So that's why you'll see some of those, there's, I think, a handful, maybe 4 or 5, that didn't make it in here because they should be specifically in the LDC. But if there's something, you know, that you wanted to discuss, you know, further, I'm happy to.
Okay. My next question, goal C-1, which is, again, this is a comprehensive plan. This is a vision for Walton County. I do not have the page.
16.
16.
Well, it may be, it's 6, it's
6
16 in the
dash-
overall document, 6 in the EAR amendments itself.
Yeah, C-1, the conservation element. Oh, I have page 36 of 159.
Oh, I was looking at capital improvements. You said, did you say G?
C-1, conservation element, page 36 of 139.
Ah, thank you.
And I know this is going to be, I'm going to be beat up for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I worked for municipality. I wasn't a planner, but I worked in public works. And Walton County allows clustering. So if there's, let's just throw out a number, if it's a 10-acre parcel and there's 10 units per acre, you can have 100 units on a 10-acre parcel. I get that. Where I come from, such the foreign land that it is, if 50% of that 10 acres is wetlands, then you're only allowed to build on 5 acres of that property.
They base the density on the upland portion.
Exactly. And that's, I've had conversations with people about, well, you know, we gotta build. The problem is a lot of the buildable property now in South Walton is compromised. It's floodland, floodplains, it's wetlands. And I'm gonna say it again, I've been saying this for 6 years. We are literally paving paradise, and the Gulf and the Bay are gonna become one. And when we are mitigating wetlands north of the Bay, it's not doing a benefit to anybody that currently lives in South Walton. And I understand that we have 2 very different geographies because we're on an island. What we do down here is not the same as what we're doing north of the Bay. And I understand that. I'm not saying that South Walton is any better or any worse. It's a very different geography, and we have to keep that in mind when we are looking at developing. And I mean, I didn't understand when I first came here that we were allowing densities based on the entire parcel and not just the uplands, because where I lived, it was based on just the upland portion. So that's a big concern for me. And I realize I'm a voice in the wilderness, and I don't ever see that necessarily getting changed, but I'm just saying that that is a concern that I have.
Wait, can you go to that page again?
36 of 159. And then along with that, also in the C-1 section, C-1.2.2, and this goes back to the conversation I had 2 weeks ago, we are interchanging the term conservation and open space. If somebody clear cuts a lot, that's open space, but that's not conservation. But that's how we are interpreting it. And that is not the intention of conservation. And I think that, again, I'm going back to the fact that we are going to be allowing so much impervious surface without the benefit of mature vegetation and wetlands, that we are going to have a stormwater issue. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a stormwater engineer. I live and breathe stormwater. And I understand sometimes you can engineer a good stormwater solution. I've been told for 6 years we're going to have a regional stormwater facility, but guess what? You can't retrofit all these other developments that have not tied into that regional system. And last weekend we got 3 inches of water, 3 inches of rain in 2 hours, 2.5 hours. 3 inches of rain is kind of a normal rain for us. But there was standing water everywhere in places that hasn't seen water. You know, go back 6 years when it was September 18th, September 19th, 2020. Can't remember the name of the hurricane, but we had 16 inches of rain.
Golf place flooded.
Yeah, I mean, Seaside, the amphitheater area was like a beautiful lake. And I'm just saying that over time, the more impervious surface that we create, that water has to go somewhere. I mean, I've done calculations of just our little Chat Holly area, because of course that's a big concern to me, that we've already mitigated over 45 acres of wetlands in that area. And I don't have my numbers, but each acre is like 1.2 million gallons of water. So multiply that times 45, that's a lot of water that's got to go somewhere. And so that's why I have a big concern that we're using conservation and open space to mean this, to mean the same thing, because they're not the same thing. And I mean, I love Walton County. I love the fact that we're growing. I love new people coming here. I think all the stupid apartments are a little crazy because they're empty, but you know, that's another problem. But I just think that that's problematic.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
I actually 100% agree with that. And so I think that that if that is being used interchangeably, we need to fix that. That should be fixed
Yeah.
in this. And if it can be fixed in the definitions and then clarified throughout, I think that's a very important point.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it's a big deal to me in the comp plan and the land
in
development
the
code,
land development
because that's
code.
how we're using it. And to say that a sidewalk or a backyard or swimming pool is open space,
It is not.
well, it's open space.
It's open space, but
It's
it's not
not
conservation.
conservation.
It's not conservation, and it should not be used interchangeably.
Right.
And if there's no room for the water to go, it's going to cause additional flooding problems over time, and we're going to be in a totally different place in 20 years.
Exactly.
So I support fixing that in here and in the land development code, and then creating definitions and being very clear about it so that it's not used interchangeably.
And then my other concerns are about doubling the densities, but I know Kristen has some concerns about that as well. The section L 1.1.2, page 51 of 159. My concern is I didn't see that coming. I've been an
I-
active participant in a lot of
Yes.
these discussions, and
I said last time that I think I've been through that meeting with DPZ and that presentation at least 4 times, maybe more. I've read through this report at least 3 times. And I'm trying to understand the logic and reasoning for those density increases and the magnitude of them. So I would love to address that if we're ready to. I don't know, and maybe there's some clarification. I have tried every which way to try to comprehend this, and I just am not. So shed some light.
So, okay, so, in its simplest explanation for why they would suggest increasing density, it's affordability, right? That's ultimately what, so it's not just affordability, it's less travel, less wear and tear on your road. There's so many things that are wrapped up into allowing a dense development to occur on a particular site that are benefits. There's also a lot of things that come with it that may not be considered benefits, right? So, but just plain and simple, and I'm sure Curtis can rip off a bunch of different figures when it comes to the price per unit.
I know,
Right,
yeah, I get all of that. I still am trying to understand, and I understand that we benefit financially from a tax base.
Yep.
I understand all of those things.
Right.
I just, what we have seen occur when we have done this in Alice Beach and Seaside is they've turned into resorts. And my fear is this is not going to create affordable housing, it's going to create more short-term rentals. And I just simply think that the reasoning behind it is not going to be the result of what is implemented. So I am adamantly opposed to this, especially I think there is one in Village Mixed Use, which again, I think we all know where I stand on that right now. And then also in residential, I mean, I just don't think that's going to be.
Well,
I get it though. I totally understand that there's an affordable component, and maybe I tried to even go through Gridix to see what south of the Bay would even be impacted.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really the bigger issue than it is north of the Bay.
It is.
And there is some stuff that could really be negatively impacted. And I don't know. I don't know if we can say we are allowing this in certain areas and not in other areas as a possibility for a compromise. I don't know.
Well, and that's what we are doing essentially, right? So
Okay.
when you look at the table here on page 51 or 41, I'm not sure which one to refer to here, but the table under policy L112, right? So it's got the list of map categories, density, allowable. Are you there?
Let me go to the map because
Okay.
I have
Okay,
actually.
I got it now.
What's the page
L11.
on the map? Because that was the one that I had screenshotted originally.
It's either 51 out of 159 or 41. I'm not sure.
41 out of 150 in the PDF that was in the agenda.
So it's 51 out of the entire staff report in this document. It's 41 out of just the EAR-based amendment.
Right.
Oh, okay, here we go. I got it.
Right,
Okay,
so
yes,
under
yes.
residential, we apply we double it there. We double it under commercial and nearly double it under mixed use, right? So, but this doesn't mean that each of the zoning districts under that future land use are going to be 16 now. That is just the maximum allowable. So when we go through the zoning language, like you don't see those changes occurring under, under rural low density. Well, that's not the right zoning district here, but under urban res, there's no change to the density there. No, low density res, like there's not specific places where that's changed. What it's calling for is within, and then if you kind of trace back to that table, you'll see that there's an asterisk by those additional densities, density allowances. And then if you turn the page to where that asterisk is, you'll see where
And sector place.
within sector
Okay.
place types, right?
Okay.
So Then when you go to the future, other future land use sections in here, and you see the requirements for under a place type, where that density would be applicable, then you'll see that, okay, so this is what the developer has to do. You have to come in, and you have to accumulate 40 to 50 acres, or whatever the, whatever the sector type is, and you have to do additional things that we would even expand upon in the land development code, right? So this isn't necessarily free density. This is density in specific locations that's going to come with the provision of civic uses, these are all mixed use sort of development types in the overlay, designed to be a carrot.
And I totally understand, because I know what the goal is.
Okay.
I totally get it. I'm just worried, and I don't disagree with the goal. I think that I agree with that. I'm just worried that it won't be applied, just like Village Mixed Use now having a one extended stay thing and a POC and a bench, and it's meeting the requirements. That is not the intent.
Right.
So that is my concern.
So if you look at let's look at some of these sector types here. Let's see what page it is. Starting on page 63, we see it's settlement types, traditional neighborhood development.
What's the heading, or what's the policy number? Oh, I see it, I see it.
Let's see.
1.6.3.
Yes, L16, or, yeah.
Yeah, I had a comment about that too, so I wanted to discuss that, so let's discuss it.
So when it comes to these village or settlement types, these center types, so all of these things provide, again, a sort of big picture idea of these things. So when we implement this language in the LDC, it'll come with additional standards and these minimum criteria that we see in the report, right? So some of these various, trying to get to some of that stuff here, hold on.
Place types?
Yeah, we're going over place types in
LDC?
Comp plan,
comp plan.
No, I mean, no,
L.1.6.
no, I've got that in the place types, but what were you,
So I'm referring to the EAR report itself.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
I apologize.
Okay,
So,
sorry.
And I hate to talk about it because you don't have it in front of you, but what this does is sort of lay out some of the requirements that we would implement in the LDC, right? So under, say, for instance, under the rural center place type, there's an allowance for 40% max of like T&D zoning, neighborhood commercial zoning, general commercial zoning. There's a 25 to 65% max for small neighborhoods. So it kind of breaks these uses down. Inside it, the conservation is per existing conditions within here, so you wouldn't be allowed to impact, further any conservation in there. There's a maximum of 6 dwelling units per acre, 17, but you have to do, you have to be on a certain corridor context, and there's parking standards that come with it, and all these sort of additional standards. Should we talk more about what that is prior to the LDC? Should we include more in here? Because I'm happy to, if that would make you all feel comfortable, then
I
we
think
could
so.
add additional
Yes.
detail in here, even if
Yeah.
it's not exactly the way that I think it should go. But that's fine.
I think I think the more specific we can be, I think the better it is. We've been in so many workshops where that has been a constant recurring theme of developers having a challenge. And I think that I know Melissa Ward said several times, make it specific so we know exactly what we are to be doing. So yes, I would like to see that. I would feel better. I know exactly where they were intended to have those locations and where they were going to build up those areas in Freeport and Definiak and along 331. I just don't want it to then end up somehow in South Walton in a place that it is not appropriate.
So, and just another piece of information. So as part of this work, and it's really not something that we can necessarily do now. There's going to be an additional sort of, a whole other sort of workshop and adoption process for a revised future land use map, right? Not necessarily the map itself, but in order to provide the overlay for the place types and the sectors, we have to develop that map, which is going to be very specific. It's going to be ground truth, to not have a better term to use there. But so like areas in Chat Holly, right, where growth cannot be accommodated further, or there's some limitations in there. Those are the sectors that, the sector type of maintain or preserve is
Right.
what will more than likely be applied to the bulk of that area, right? So you're limited to what's there on the ground now. And you're limited to what the place types will allow, which would allow, in some instances, some additional density and intensity, provided you're gonna do X, Y, Z. So, part of this, and it's difficult to imagine and conceptualize, where those sectors are gonna be, right? So when we're looking at these things, it means very little without an image, right? But it really necessitates a lot of work that we don't have the time to do currently. So we're putting these things into place to create these placeholders to do that follow-up work, right? So when it comes to the additional requirements for this density, I think while I firmly believe that the LDC is the place to do it, I think I can bring something back here that will provide some additional detail that will probably serve to, address some of your concerns.
Yeah, that's, kind of the reference I made when I was talking, that unfortunately, we cover a lot of ground.
Yeah.
There's only 3 municipalities within Walton County, and we have jurisdiction over the rest of it. And yet, all is not equal. And I think DPC did a good job of identifying these sectors and the anticipated growth areas. I think we just need to make sure that we nail that down, because there are so many places currently in the LDC and the comp plan, it is our vision, that are open to interpretation. And the less openings we give, the better document we have.
Okay, so let's talk about what that kind of means to you all, right? So when we're talking about adding density to some of these land use districts, and we're gonna attach a carrot, right? So that density is the carrot for developers, right? So what are we incentivizing there? What would you like to see? What would be a meaningful thing for a developer to provide to get to 50 units an acre in specific locations in the county?
Personally, I don't have one thing at all, because I don't know. What do you think? What do you think is worth? Yeah, it stacks.
We don't
We have
have
a
it
height
anywhere
limit.
in the county.
We already have a
There's-
height limit. Listen, and I have done the calculations on this because this is what I do. And based on square footage, based on setbacks, based on what all of the other things that are currently in our parking requirements, all the little things, they're going to be tiny little things stacked on top of each other up to our maximum of 50 feet. And I don't understand what I looked at it, and when I did calculations, it's going to be like 400, 500, 600 maybe square foot units. It's going to be very small. I don't know. I'm trying to understand who would this be serving with,
So
with that.
I don't know that we would ever get there. We have 30 units an acre on the books now. I can't think of a single development, maybe one that has that density on the ground. now.
Not without increasing height. It's just almost impossible to do.
Right.
And how many square feet are they each unit typically? Are they tiny? But you've got a height. You've got the height. That's the only way to make it work. And for right now, we have a 50-foot height limit. I mean, there's just, I don't know, I'm trying to understand how this would even, how it would even look.
Yeah, and maybe 50 is too high.
I think
Maybe
it's too
that's-
high.
Maybe that's the
I really
starting point.
do. I don't know how you make that work without having everybody be in dorm rooms.
Yeah, 50 is way too high. I mean, I don't know, what's wrong with leaving it at 30?
Nothing in my mind,
It
but
should
I
be.
mean, maybe let's talk to the developers and the engineers
Yeah.
here. I mean, is there a situation in the county where you think 50 units an acre would be an appropriate situation given some other circumstances?
Without increasing height, unless we're gonna change that on these.
That's not happening.
Okay,
Right.
then there is no way to make 50 feet work with 50 units. It's not possible with all the other things that we have, unless you literally want them to be
Dorm room.
dorm. I mean, it's very tiny. I mean, I think even stretching it, I couldn't even figure out a way to get more than 600 square feet, absolute max, with all the other things. And even that, I mean, that is like barely a one bedroom, barely, but it was closer really to more like 450 square feet was really, I mean, I was trying to be creative.
Yeah.
And,
You're looking
and
at efficiency units.
yes,
and
you're
just-
looking at literally the tiniest little things, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand who this is going to serve affordably.
Y'all have any thoughts on this?
Exactly. Agreed. And then you're looking at dorm rooms. Mhm. There is a need.
The only thing I would say, I'm thinking back to my days in Nashville. It's been a long time, but we did some high rises in Nashville that are, zero setbacks, things like that. We would get to that range. Have 300 units in one
Exactly.
block in the city. So, that's kind of it. But the other thing I guess I would say is maybe a lot of times we fall in this trap where we always think about South Walton here because that's where a lot of
No,
our development is.
I'm not.
But
either,
long
which-
term, I don't know that Defuniak or some of these other places will ever get to that, but maybe there'll be a case for higher buildings at some point. But I guess as of right now, if we're limiting to four stories, I don't know that we ever could get over 30 units an acre.
Can't. Not with any meaningful sort of quality housing with, except for dorms, which is kind of similar to that one project that we went over in Freeport where they were providing that and there was like
Oh, the Bay Vita site.
yes, that had that workforce housing there as a component to it, and it would have to be something pretty similar to that in order to make it work. And do we really want a bunch of that? I mean, maybe a little bit, but I think that could also be incorporated into projects like that. I thought that was a great project.
Yeah, it was. Right, again, so maybe 50 is too high, maybe 30 is the number for mixed use. Yeah.
Can you get, like, when I met with Marina, they gave me some different pictures of what each size,
Mm-hmm.
one to, 30 units per acre. I think if we could visually see it, or what they're even saying here.
I'd love to
maybe we
see
can-
it
yeah,
too.
maybe we can
I would
understand.
honestly love to see what they envision as well in terms of 50. I would like to see it too. That would be helpful. I'm just not sure it works. Yes. I know.
Well, not necessarily, right? Well, it would still be reliant on each individual zoning district. So for now, like, the max is 30, but T and D is the only one that gets you there, right? And you have to do quite a bit to get there. So that would be how we would, it wouldn't be across the board. We wouldn't see 50 units in VMU if it still exists, or, it would be done, in
I
a
have anything to
methodical way.
do
We're
with
just
it.
setting up that base max.
We're
Yep.
trying to get more towards place type versus the PDD situation. Is that what this is trying to bring to?
I mean, ultimately, that was what's in the report, right?
That's
So-
their entire concept, which I love. I love that concept. I just don't know if this is, we didn't ever get an example of that because that these densities were never discussed.
Yeah.
We could have addressed it.
You're right. I don't remember a time where they were
Wasn't.
specific about what they were talking about. I mean, there were times where I think she alluded to some increases, but
She
never,
did, for sure.
never like this, right? I get
Absolutely.
that.
And then also like, bonus densities for better project, like incentivizing to, we talked about that. I mean, that was something that was definitely,
And that's the point of the place types,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that density, this sort of, and what we could do is just be very specific that these densities that we're offering are explicitly only in these place types and only if you do
Correct.
X, Y, Z, right?
Correct.
So that,
and again, we still need to even think if 50 works. I'm just not sure it does.
yeah, I don't know that it does either. I mean, again, this is one of those things that I'm not sure I agree with that being the magic number. And maybe maybe we just need to look at how we expand or make the 30 units available and more than just T&D with the place types, with the extra things that we would require, if that's the way we go here. So I can pull back the 50 unless we want to have additional conversations. I'll lower that down back down to 30, I guess, and we'll see about how we can
Unless someone
incentivize
can
that
show
in
me how
others.
it works.
I'm
And
sorry?
I would like to see how that even works with a 50-foot height limit.
I'll reach out to Marina and see if she can provide some
Okay.
additional sort of context and when a development situation this would work in.
So would you allow me to, do you have the ability to pull up Google Maps here? I don't know if you guys can do it, but I wanted to give you an example because I had a project in Nashville many years ago, and it's one of the highest density ones I ever worked on, so I wanted to see what it was. It's called the Encore. It was a 21-floor condominium. The units varied from about 600 to 1,200 square feet. There were 1 and 2 bedrooms. So I went back and did the math. I looked up GIS acreage. It's on 1.05 acres.
Oh.
And there were 300 units on 21 floors. So if I do the math on that, that's about 285 units an acre. And then I look at floors,
Yeah.
and that's 13 units per floor. So if I take 13 units per floor and multiply it by 4, we get to 50. So you can actually do it.
Going to be those 600 square foot.
No, he
Well,
said they were
no,
six
this
to
was
1,000.
yeah, they were, the smallest ones, there were some affordable housing units
But
through
again,
the HUD program.
you're taking that example, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong, but we have setbacks, we have parking requirements, we have to
Yeah,
make sure
it
that all
met-
the other things work as well.
So it did meet those. There was parking garage in that. So if you'd imagine, and that kind of messed up the math a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it does. The
the
parking
first-
really is where you get that's where
Well, the first 6 floors were
tripped up.
units on one side and parking garage on the other side, and the
that only
remaining
gives you,
floors.
if you've got one level for parking, that gives you 3 levels to have houses. So 3
no-
times,
Well, no. What I'm saying is you can still make it work with parking on part of the building and housing on the other. They're all on the same level. It's just kind of a wider building. I wanted to do the math though to see if it was possible on 4 floors, and it comes to 52. So it is possible. It's just highly unlikely. So I don't know what the math is at Seascape because that's looked at as a DRI, but we could look at some of those too to get it. Actually, we'd probably better look at some of the condos across
parking
from Gulf Place
requirements
and things.
on an acre.
I do say all that to say it is possible, so maybe, because what Stephen's saying, this is not setting the code, it's setting the maximum allowable. Maybe there is an opportunity somewhere for a 4-story condominium project that has HUD affordable housing in it
Maybe.
at 600 to 1,000 square feet units.
Can we have it be some sort of, if there is that location, if that exists, place typed and make that the exception rather than this be the rule?
Yeah, I mean, we could set the max I mean, what we can do is add some language in here with 50 and just be explicit in here with density bonuses or something where that's not necessarily the base max, it's just the
Or
max if
30
you
with
do all these
density
other things.
bonuses.
I'm sorry?
Or 30 with density bonuses. Yeah, let's do 30 and then density bonuses as, that way, yeah. And again, Nashville's parking requirements are going to be different than our parking requirements. We have short-term rental, we have you need a parking spot for every 900 square feet. That's going to change. I don't know if your project in Nashville had that same requirement that they needed one parking spot for every 900 square feet. That does impact.
It was that. So it was one space for one-bedroom units, two spaces for 1.5 and 2-bedroom units. So spaces were smaller. They were 8.5 foot wide, not 9. But yeah, it's tight. I agree. The other variable is something I wanted to say earlier when you were talking about conservation. It was kind of screaming in my brain as you were talking about it. One of the challenges we have with the wetland things is we have low density here. Our density maximums are lower than anywhere I've ever worked. So, but it works because we transfer it. That's why it works. So if there could be a potential opportunity to go to, you're using only the upland areas, but you got to increase the densities to offset that. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So,
And if I could speak just briefly, so if we don't allow for some of that transfer, I think what partly we'll see is additional wetland impacts being permitted through the Corps and the DEP. And we have some density reductions that involve, but I believe that if we don't allow the density to be transferred, I mean, you can speak to this, you deal with folks that do that.
well, you can do either or is what I'm saying. So if you're in a 4 units an acre scenario, most of our lots, most of our standard production home lots in Owl's Head and Ashton Park and things in Freeport, most of those are 55 by 110 lots. Some of them are 60 by 110. So they're only 0.15 acre lots. You can do the math easy on 4 units an acre, that's 0.25. So we have to increase the density if we're not using the transfer from those areas, we've got to increase the density offset, and then we could do it.
But that's what I was also trying to say. What's happening in North Walton with affecting wetlands versus what's happening in South Walton affecting wetlands, we're talking apples and oranges.
Right.
And so somehow that has to be addressed. And I'm I don't know how to verbalize that, and I get you, Curtis, that totally makes sense on how to do that. I'm just concerned about what's happening, especially if we mitigate wetlands. I mean, there's a lot kitty corner across the street from me that was basically unbuildable, but the owner paid $30,000 to the Army Corps to have the wetland mitigated, and now they built a house on it. Well, it doesn't take away the flooding issue. So, that's my concern, especially in South Walton.
Can I address that kind of as well? From my thought, and looking back at what we talked about last time, and me saying these aren't native habitat. So going back to incentivizing the development, because I'm not a developer. I bought this land for my daughter's horses. Curtis will probably tell you, I probably have half of what we're arguing about here. So it's like, I have all the zoning. I'm not worried about irritating anybody out there because, and I mean the best because I want it for my children and all of the things that we're looking at. So when I look at these things and I look at some of these 10-acre parcels that aren't relevant to me, I think to myself, this is not natural habitat. How can we incentivize people to bring these, because the density is still low. When you're talking about 1 to 2.5 per 10 acres, and I understand where you're coming from on the wetland side of things, and it's like, how do we say, okay, to do a naturalized stormwater pump, let's give them a 10% bonus density. You're talking about one lot. But how are these developers going to pay for what we want is the restoration? Because unfortunately, for a lot of people, and I know where most of y'all live, y'all weren't under the same stormwater regulation. So the last developers now are paying for what was done poorly before. So we sit up here, we pass judgment on things, when I can look at everybody and the people I see on social media that complain all the time are living in some of the most dense areas, and they're complaining about somebody else doing something. So that was the whole premise of the Affordable Housing Summit yesterday. I try to go to all these things because I want a fair balance for the future of Walton County. So everybody in the room almost was the people that are causing the affordability issue, the people that don't want growth, the people that are on the planning side of things, the governmental side of things that want moratoriums, the bankers that are sitting next to me that are charging the interest rate. I just see it from a whole different perspective. And I'm thinking to myself, how can we get on the same page? And to me, from a development standpoint, I'm seeing the business side of it and saying, how can we give some incremental bonus density in those conservation residential areas to make it better? Like, how can we do like
maybe
longleaf?
that can be the asterisk is you can do 50 if you do this, but let's keep it at 30 and then give that as the incentive. I'm totally fine with incentives to get something better. I think that's a way to change behavior more so than other ways. I just want to make sure that we default to something that I just worry. I think we can see things on every single meeting where it's a loophole or it's a stretch or it's, I just don't want to get into that kind of situation with this.
I think if we could be specific on
Yeah.
incentives,
Yes.
from either the parking standpoint or the
Yeah.
longleaf restoration, whatever it is that we're looking at, then we can have the compromise for the betterment of the community.
And you keep saying that this is not natural habitat, maybe it's not what was here 50 or 100 years ago, but it's what's here now. And, long roots do a lot more for absorbing water than clear cutting.
Oh, I'm not for the clear cutting. I'm for putting a longleaf instead of a slash pine because
Oh.
you have very little ecological value.
Right.
And I think we keep pushing back and saying no clear cutting when we really need to say no clear cutting unless you do some restoration to it.
Yes, but restoration only goes so far because the amount of water that the current vegetation is going to uptake is 10 times more than what a replanted plant is going to take up.
But if you're looking at discharge, I think that's your most important.
That's my big concern. Yeah, that's why I want to see stuff conserved rather than opened up, so. But I also understand what you're saying, and I get it. There has to be some type of compromise. It's not just a matter of, oh, here's a 10-acre parcel, and 50% of it is wetland. I'm either going to mitigate it north of the bay, which to me is absolutely ignorant. And by the way, I have had many conversations with Florida DEQ, and they're like, yeah, that's really stupid. And I'm like, but it exists. So, and I can't fix it. You have to fix it. But there's got to be a way, because I'm not trying to prevent these parcels from being developed. I'm just trying to make it good for the people, because, and you have a point, the next developer, the next developer, the next developer, they're all paying the price for the sins of the people that came before. But, and that's when my subdivision was developing, the same thing. Every house that was built after it is going to be facing a bigger stormwater challenge because of the way the houses were built at the beginning. I didn't control that. However, we can't make it so that the 53rd lot is gonna drown everybody else out every time it rains. And, you know, I think overbuilding and not paying attention to these conservation practices, which were the intent of these zoning districts, is short-sighted on our part. Sorry, I kept talking, and I know
Now,
you
can we
wanted
move
to
on
talk.
then? We've kind of beat this
Yeah,
one to
we-
death.
We have, so let me just run this by, so under the mixed-use policy, L161, what I'm gonna do there is attempt to further define when this density could potentially be
Allowable,
available,
yes.
right? So I'll do that there. And if we could just bump back up to general commercial, because that's another one where we went from 17 to 30. So this speaks specifically to this single zoning district. So currently it's 17, and you can do 17 units an acre by right if you have a vertical mixed use, right? If you have commercial on the bottom, residential above, there's a conditional use opportunity to forego the vertical mix where you can do just a straight multifamily, but you have to provide 20% affordability, or affordable set-asides, right? So in this, with this increase in density, what we're talking about here is increasing affordable units as well. So I just want to make sure that we understand that. Now, if 30 is not the right number, is it 20? Is it, what is it?
20. Okay, yeah, I know. Explain, like, give me an example.
Actually, I would probably say the example might be what I just gave you, because that type of development would probably work well in a commercial setting. I don't really like how we do our commercial, to be honest
High-rise
with you,
I
because it is.
agree with that.
I don't like that we do that. The vast majority of places that I worked in the past had similar to Freeport, R1, R2, R3, or high-density residential.
Yeah.
We had multiple residential categories, and that's where that lived, and we had some mixed-use categories, but we didn't really, commercial was commercial. But, of course, just focusing back on South Walton, we don't have commercial. There are 0 parcels commercial in South Walton. But we have a dire need for commercial in South Walton right now, because we've built a lot of residential and we don't have enough commercial to serve it. So that's a pretty big problem. That's another reason why I want VMU to get fixed back to commercial, which is what we have. That's what we need. But 30 units an acre is good for the type of project that I was talking about earlier. And I give you the example, we could get it up to 50 maybe, but realistically 30 is about where we could get those projects to and have 1.5, 2-bedroom housing for young people that can, when I came fresh out of school, that was my first place I
Commercial
bought.
component to it, is it, because, what's the commercial component?
We actually don't, well, it's because apartments are like the
They're
main thing that get
Considered,
done in those.
okay, yeah, that's, I don't know, is that what we're, is that the intent?
I sort of missed the
The
question there.
intent of, what is the intent of increasing? Tell me the rationale, the reasoning, the explanation for that.
Again, I'm going to just defer to the benefit of density when it comes to affordability, right? So if
But-
we allow an
But what
applicant,
is the project? Give me an example of how we, like, what is the project that increases it? Tell me what would make sense.
so let me just take a step back and ask if there's a way to get to 30 where we say, instead of just having affordable units, you have to do 80% or less AMI. You have to do vertical mixed use. There's not a condition there. Like, what if we just tack on some of those things? Because ultimately, if we allow for more units in commercial, we'll get more affordable units in commercial. I'm assuming that is what drove this recommendation. That's the only thing I can come up with.
But doesn't Live Local, there's a 40% affordability component and 30 units per acre?
So if you're doing a Live Local Act project, yeah, you have to abide by those standards, right? But if somebody comes in and they don't want to do a Live Local, then it would be in one of these zoning districts where they would get the density that they needed to do that that multifamily development.
I think what we're forgetting about is the 120% AMI. We're increasing all these units. That is, historically, that is what has happened already. And we have not one affordable unit that came out of any of those increased densities. Am I right? Okay.
That's a good argument. I would
We have
agree
not
with
had,
that generally
every
speaking.
developer has stood up here in front of every commissioner, 20% is going to be affordable, da-da-da-da-da, at 120% AMI. Do you think people knew what that meant? Absolutely not. It's going to be for our teachers and our nurses and our firefighters. They are not making $60,000, $64,000, which would have even gotten them in that apartment. So I show up at the Pearl, you know that. And I said, where are your affordable units? We don't have any. It's all, list price. So unless you change it to 80% AMI, can you do that, Stephen?
I mean, if we allow this density to be up to 30 based on the provision of 80% AMI or whatever, if we create that tiered sort of system of density in this zoning district, if
In the
they
zoning,
want
so
that.
you'll have to, so in other words, it's in that comp plan, but it's not in the zoning yet.
No, it's not.
So,
And it wouldn't
so
be.
that's scary to me, because what we're still saying is it's 120% AMI. We haven't,
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I'm offering here, if we're okay with 30 or some number higher, then it's very similar to what I'm doing for the mixed use. I would provide that additional language stipulating how you get that density.
would it be 80% of the AMI?
That's my question to you all. Can we provide some additional density if we limit or require some additional things? And just shooting from the hip, an 80% AMI would get us, I think, where we need to be when it comes to affordable housing, because you're right, 120% AMI isn't affordable for most folks that need affordable units.
The average median income, according to the state in Walton County, is about what, $93,000? That's what they're basing it on.
Yeah,
Well,
the
it is.
figure
It's
yesterday was like
87.
75, but that
80.
seemed
Like
low.
I thought it was like
75
80.
or 80.
It's what?
It's not that high.
Yes, yes. You look on the state, I don't have it with me. The average median income from the state is in the 90s.
Oh, for the state. I was talking about for us locally.
Yeah, locally,
It's
Well, for
locally
Walton
work.
County, no, for Walton County, the statistics are in the $90,000 for average median income.
I think there's two different ones. I think the median is the 76, the average, though, I think is the 90, if I'm not mistaken.
What the state goes by for Walton County, and we need to get that document, and I swear I'm so busy, but I'm going to get it to somebody, and I think planning needs to get it, because the developers are doing 120% of that high number. And that's, look, I didn't just make this stuff up. I've
Oh,
been,
I just-
this is,
I-
we need to get that document. And Stephen, if you even went 80% of the AMI, you're going to have to go up in front of the commissioners. So why put it in the comp plan when we don't have the backup?
Yeah, we don't know what it is, so
Yeah,
that's a
it
good
does,
point.
I'm looking online, it says as of April 2025, AMI for Walton County is used to determine eligibility for affordable
Right.
housing. 80% AMI is 81,040 for certain programs.
Right.
That, and I recall that, it was in the 80s. I thought it was 85,000 was my guess. Yeah, exactly.
Right. All right. David just showed us that 120% AMI, somebody needs to be making $82,000.
Yes.
Right.
They need to get into it.
Right. So currently, the way that they get that density, if they want to do a solo multifamily development, is that they have to provide this 20% set aside at any level, right? So if y'all are interested in this, again, this is a starting off point. If you want to see an increase in density here, we can stipulate how you get there by saying it has to be this income tier or lower, it has to be this, it has to be that. Or it just gets pulled. That's kind of where I'm at, right? One way or the other. Yeah, so,
Provide this? I mean, most of us here probably don't have that.
no, we move some of these proposed changes back before them, when DPZ was doing this initially, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, that there was not an opposition, a strong opposition to increases in density if it didn't include, provisions for affordable housing. So, ultimately, that's where they're at. If we can get to a place where we're providing affordability or more opportunity to provide affordability, they're all for it.
Because I hear Barbara, and I think we all agree, we gotta figure out what that threshold is.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to do it right.
Yeah, the
Well-
120 is not the right one to get to this density, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Walton County as a whole, if you take north and south, and I Googled it, it's 81,000 to 83,000 based on 2025 estimates. South Walton specifically is 108,000. I mean, that's significantly different.
It is.
So when you're talking average, and then when you actually look up the definition of affordable housing, that 30%, very few of these developments fall into that category. And then, like you said, it's all second homes and people are,
It becomes resort short-term rental.
exactly.
They're-
And that's what we're
Well,
trying to
I mean,
avoid that.
you can't do an actual short-term rental in a multifamily development, but, I mean, I understand the point, right? And I know, I'm sure it happens in some capacity somehow, but technically, that's not supposed to happen, so. Okay, well, let me work on that a little bit. I'll see what I can do.
Are we gonna talk about residential too?
Yeah, I was gonna go there next.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you'll see, I didn't bump up any of the densities under the other residential zoning districts. I took the neighborhood commercial up to 8. And that is specifically because I don't think, we don't get enough of the vertical mixed use, right? So neighborhood commercial allows it, but without some additional density allowed there, we're just never gonna get it, right? So that's where my head was in that respect. So, happy to discuss, certainly. That's 8. So we went from 4 to 8 in the neighborhood commercial. I didn't go and change any of the other available densities in the residential zoning districts in this instrument. It allows up to 16, but there was no changes outside of the main provision that allows for that max, other than, of course, the neighborhood commercial is not even in the residential zoning district, but we can talk about that. But how do you all feel about that 8 units in neighborhood commercial? So that is only for those units above, it's for live work. That would be the only application of that density, is above commercial units.
I think that works.
Okay, so, well, let's talk about the residential zoning district. So you'll see under policy L141, the added language there, and I know, I think I got to clean up the math a little bit. It should be 6 units, I think, per acre. So areas designated R in the future land use map, excluding residential preservation and found within the growth sector, may request up to an additional, it should be 6 units per acre, within a settlement or center place type development, right? So that's the kind of language I would be adding with some additional caveats, I think, in some of the other situations where it's giving that sort of base path forward to get it, right? So it has to be explicitly here with this sector designation. So we can add some additional stuff as well, but the idea being that the sector and the place types will come, well, certainly the place types will come with those very specific requirements, potentially even leaning into a form-based code in some of these sectors where you would get, if you apply this form-based code or you apply these other standards, you'll get to that density. But short of doing that, you're stuck with your density that you have now. Thoughts?
That's fine. No, I think that's fine.
I mean, feel like we've been addressing affordable housing in like several different areas, and are we overdoing it?
I mean, there is what's been called a national affordability crisis, right? So I think it's been building for some time, and I think it's going to persist for some time. If there's a miraculous solution that comes, in the next decade or so, maybe we'll get out of it, but I don't know if we will.
Costs are land costs, so.
Curtis?
Okay.
And I also just did some math here. Do you have The intent of this is to show you the scale of it, of the density and what we're talking about. One day I'm going to show this to you guys. I spent a lot of time preparing this on conservation residential and what changing that means. But the important part is the density as well as the cost. If you all can see this, what I did was I took our actual bid.
Got a big box that says the screen is not currently set. Can you close that?
Let me try to do this.
No, we still
Oh,
got that
okay,
right in the
wait,
middle.
no, I don't need it. Okay.
Oh, there, it went away. Don't touch it.
Is that good? All right. So, what my intention on this, I'm not going to talk about the CR stuff right now, but I redesigned an entire neighborhood that we just got pricing on to see what the density goes to. And it went from 1.6 units per acre to 1.36 units per acre. And there's a comparison.
So you said it went from 6?
1.6
from
to
1.6 to 1.36. Now it went from 13 lots to 11 lots on about 8 acres. So this is what density means. It's an exponential thing when we're talking about subdivisions. And when we're talking about 1 or 2 parcels, not that big. It's when you got to build roads and sewers and all that. So what I did was I went through our typical developer cost and breakdown to show a typical developer that's going to take a 75% loan to value ratio out. On the 13 units, he loses $10,000 on this development if he gets financing. If we take that down to 11 units, he loses $387,000 on that development. He doesn't do the development. That's losing 2 units. And shrinking up the plan, based on what I showed earlier, to ingest and compact everything into a small space. You got to share the pump station, the roads, all that stuff. That's part of the reason why that happens. So I have other numbers in here. We don't have time to go through all this, but it's really what can you sell a home at?
Right.
To put this into perspective, so those lots cost so the platted lot value on the 13 units is $190,000. That's about what they can
Yeah.
sell for today.
It's 11% difference.
And the infrastructure cost was $132,000 a lot. The platted lot cost on the other one, because it shrunk significantly, you can put less house on, it was only $180,000. But the cost of the lot the infrastructure only is about $150,000. That doesn't count the cost of the land.
Right,
That doesn't count the impact fees.
right.
All that stuff's in here as well.
I get it.
So I also looked at our 4 units an acre. Actually, I think it came out to 3.6, the Hunter's Village, if you guys remember that on Nellie. That one, the infrastructure cost came in at $68,000 a lot. That's the order of magnitude we're talking about here. We're talking about $50,000 to add 15 lots on a subdivision. Then I looked at higher density, we did one at Freeport, a townhome development. This one has right at 7.7 units an acre, not counting the conservation. Freeport, we had that out, so it was only on the development parts of it. And those came out to $28,000 per lot to create the multifamily. So this is the order of magnitude we're talking about. When in that 2 units to 4 units an acre, today, we can barely make a home less than $600,000 to $800,000. That's as good as we can get.
I get it. I mean, I did the same thing for houses up north. And while the cost of things has skyrocketed everywhere, here more than anywhere that I can name, but I don't think that Walton County needs to compromise on their vision so that developers
Make more money.
can make more money.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree too.
Because one of the things that I look at every time a development comes to me, the first thing I do is I take the, hold on, what's the term? The parcel number, and I go look it up. And then I look to see when the developer bought that parcel. And I see that they bought it in 2024 with the intention of putting 40 homes on it or whatever. So, or, so they paid a good price for it to begin with, because it wasn't that long ago. And in order for them to break even because of the price per lot and the infrastructure cost, they're gonna have to either put a lot of houses there, or they're gonna have to be so expensive that people can't afford to buy them. I get that. But I don't think the Walton County needs to compromise and hurt the people that already live here. Now, granted, I'm with you, David. The sins are the people that came before us. I get it. But we cannot keep propagating this same problem. And we can't say, oh, gee, yeah, they bought that 2 years ago in order for them to make it affordable. We have to compromise our principles and our land development code and our comp plan to make it so that they could break even. Then they shouldn't have bought the parcel. I'm sorry.
There's other ways to build too that, you could be cautious and you might not be getting the interior finishes that you would normally like to see. And that's just the way that you can leverage the fact that you have a less density and your costs are increased. I don't know. I don't feel obligated to change things so that developers can make more money. That's not a great argument, I don't think, for anybody. To be perfectly honest, the community will lose their mind.
Well, while I absolutely understand that, and I agree that it's not. I guess in my mind, I'm not thinking about it in terms of lining a developer's pockets.
I know you're not.
Right,
I
I'm
know
thinking
you're
about
not.
it in terms of the cost, right? So the
yes.
less per lot, the better the end user is gonna have, right? So I wanted to be clear there. I get all the points. I just, but again, I think increasing density in the right way, in the right location is what we should be doing.
I agree.
Yes.
In the right
Where,
circumstances.
right, where is the right location? What is the right way?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Everything we keep doing, though, keep pushing things to the natural home building. I don't know any,
Yeah.
like, people that are going out trying to do things like I'm trying to do. I just don't see it anymore. I don't know if they even
What are you
can.
trying to do? Tell me what you're trying to
So
do.
I've hired DBZ
Uh-huh.
to do a master plan of 265 acres.
Okay. Where is it located?
It
Okay.
is in the Chat Holly corridor.
Right.
We
Okay.
have an existing horse farm out there. And I'm not
Indian
trying-
woman to
Indian
393.
woman to
393.
393, over to North Church, actually.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
anyways, get to the long story short, but using less of the land, using probably about a 60% footprint, or 40% footprint, leaving a lot of it in conservation, but the right conservation. But it's like, how do you incentivize good development and keep what we keep having come in, especially in the Chattahoochee corridor? We keep just stacking
Yeah.
these 45-foot lots because it's the only thing that anybody can build and do.
It's really the sales price DR, I didn't go into those numbers, but these custom home builders that we have, they can't build these less than 250 square foot. DR can break below 200.
No.
So when the lot cost so much, and they know the market can only bear a $600,000 or $700,000 home, they look at it and say, I can't do this, they sell it to DR.
And I think that affordability issue
Yeah,
happens.
that's a decent point.
And I think some of this affordability goes, and I was telling Steve this yesterday, and I don't think we're gonna have affordability in South Walk. I mean,
Right.
No, land costs are too much. It's not gonna happen.
But what I see happening is the local guy buys this 10-acre tract. Next thing you know, he sells it to 68 Ventures. 68 Ventures sells it to DR Horton. So you've got, in like your point, 2 to 3 years, somebody has made a tremendous amount of money
Just selling the lot.
selling it.
Right, and now the last guy gets stuck holding it, and, I mean, if it is DR Horton, he can
He
probably
can make it work.
make it work, but, right, but, and I'm not saying, I know I don't want a lot of DR Horton developments, but we're already seeing them, so, you know, what the heck? But I still, I think we need to move on.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
I think we all agree that increased development in the right places
Yeah.
is a good thing.
Before we move on, 16 units in residential, you'll see that I didn't apply that to any individual zoning district in here. Is there any conversation that can be had about where increases in the residential zoning district would be appropriate and how we get there? Other than what I included in terms of growth sector and place type. Is there anything else, any other zoning districts, urban res, neighborhood infill, anything in there that we can add density and a carrot to get there, or the carrot is a density?
Definitely not neighborhood infill.
No neighborhood infill. Okay, so what if there's a situation where there's a 12-unit development next to a neighborhood infill, and then a vacant piece of state land on one side and a commercial unit on the other, and then maybe a vacant conservation res, right? So if their applicable compatible standard is a higher density than 10, we're still gonna limit them to 10? Okay. Urban res, do we want to allow some additional density bonus there? This is another one that provides the 20% affordability.
Yeah,
Do we increase it and then maybe tack on that 80% AMI to get there?
that's an appropriate spot.
Yeah.
How do we define urban?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I don't like the name of this zoning district.
That is tough.
I don't know that we have urban areas in South Walton.
I don't think.
Maybe
we're
a
urban
couple
county.
blocks, yeah, maybe a couple blocks of urban area, but maybe not, I don't know. This really should be something different.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll think about that too in this exercise.
I think this report was prepared by somebody up in Northern Virginia, up near DC, and they like a lot of those kind of terms.
Well, it makes sense because it's applicable there.
Low-density residential, medium-density residential, high-density, like most places.
Like, you mean like a
Like a
R1,
R1, 2,
R2?
3?
I like that too, honestly. I think that would be very appropriate. It's so easy. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree, and believe me, I would never say anything bad about DPZ. They had their method, they went through this process the way that they thought they would, and this is what we paid for. So instead of trying to
It's so much
operate
easier to
outside
do
of that, right? So I mean, maybe that's what we do.
I think that's
But
a great idea.
I will tell you that there's a bit of a time crunch on this work, right? So we're limited now on what we can do in terms of our map amendments until we get this approved by the state. There's probably going to be a number of back and forth situations with 180 concerns that they're probably going to have with some of this stuff. So if the direction from the board, and I'm happy to take it, is to revisit these zoning districts and how we operate in terms of residential, and if we want to get more towards an R1, 2, 3 situation, I'm happy to do that, but it's going to take time, and it could be time that that could be spent
I
elsewhere.
hate making decisions and stuff under the thumb of time, because then they're not the best decisions.
I agree.
So
I agree with that.
I think that makes the most sense to me, is defining it like every other place in the United States. They all have that. That this is so unusual to not. It makes it so much easier.
I'll look at that. Bearing in mind, of course, that the residential zoning districts that we have, except for neighborhood infill and residential preservation here, can probably move into that direction, right? Where this urban res
Yeah.
could potentially be like an R3 or something, but maybe not. So I'll toy with that a little bit, but
I get the time constraint, but I don't think we should, throw something up just because we have to.
right. I just, again, I didn't want to detract from the work that the county
I get
paid
it.
a large amount of money to prepare. But I absolutely appreciate and accept your point, and then Curtis, your point as well, so.
And we agree on it.
Yeah.
They're place typing, and that's how they're trying to do very specific things. And it's by place type and by sector names, which makes it confusing versus just saying this is R1, this is R2, and this is R3. So that's what they're trying to accomplish. It, in theory, is a lovely idea. It's just confusing. I've watched the presentation like 4 to 5 times, and I'm still not 100% certain what each of those definitions are.
So, yeah,
They took my project and they gave me all 4 examples, I paid a lot of money to get these 4 different things. And they essentially said the same thing. Honestly, from a density perspective, if you were looking at these things, you're not talking but maybe less than 1% different in all of this stuff. It's just semantics of what goes on. Maybe it's different for one parcel versus a big project.
I do think that when you look at the concepts here, right, of the sector plan that spreads out across the entirety of the county, and you can get into the detail of, okay, this is absolutely where growth should occur. This is where it should not. This is where it should be preserved. And then being able to apply these sort of broader development sort of systems, over these sections or sectors where they're appropriate, it is ultimately what they were after, right?
Right.
It's
I love the concept.
it is. It's great, and it's hard to wrap our heads around. Even as planning professionals that sat in these meetings, it's still sort of difficult. I think when we can get to a place where we can develop these maps and
Yes.
determine where these sectors and place types and things should go, it's going to be a much easier thing, a much more tangible and thing to deal with. But conceptually, it's odd.
Yeah.
It is.
Outside of redevelopment, how much do we really have?
In the
The
south,
ton in
the
North
south end,
Walton, I
very
mean, there's
little.
Very little, right?
Like-
In South Walton, yeah, but North Walton,
North
there's a
Walton
lot.
is
Right.
like a,
It's a totally
and
different thing.
Right.
It is,
it is.
That's when I think we gotta look at transfer density rights and stuff up there.
absolutely.
Well, yes.
Stephen, you're eliminating
The 1 to
1 to
10,
10?
CR 1 to 10. Yeah, so in their report, they speak specifically that, that's a recommendation to get rid of that based on, I think there's only like a small portion of CR 1 to 10.
I don't know, they're in Chad Holly.
Yeah.
Your decision
So again, I really, I want to emphasize that I based all of these things on the report, right? So I don't agree necessarily with all the things, but I wanted to ensure that the county, the money that the county spent was put to use and moved forward. So I am looking to you, I'm looking to the public to tell me, that CR 1 to 10 is appropriate or it's not appropriate? And if it's not appropriate, then should it go to CR 1 to 5? Should it go to 1 to 2.5? Should it go to 2 to 1? These are the conversations that I hope we have with some of these changes.
I got Margaret's busy typing here, and I wish Margaret Landry was here.
No, I wish,
And all I can say is, have a conversation with Margaret Landry, because I think there's wetlands there,
Well, see, and that's the problem when we change it to 1 to 2.5 or 1 to 5, then it takes into consideration the amount of wetlands, and it's not just building on the uplands, it's building on the entire parcel, and then we end up shooting ourselves in the foot.
So I'll be honest with you, I don't know that any of the CR is appropriate, right? I think if we moved away from just this blanket sort of zoning where you can't do these things and we rely more heavily on, okay, here's the areas that have to be preserved. Here are the things that you have to conserve in this zoning district. That is more appropriate to me because there's plenty of parcels in CR that aren't inundated with wetlands and floodplain.
Right.
So I think there's
And
a balancing
I
act
totally
here.
agree. We're
Yeah.
all kind of in agreement on that.
But again, how do we get there? Like
Yeah,
what's
that's like a big change.
right?
But yeah, I agree. But we have the document from DPZ.
Mhm.
We're talking about making changes, and I kind of agree with Kristen. Let's make it right.
Okay. Look, despite what I said before, time constraints, I get it. But doing this the right way is where we need to be. What I hope to avoid is another year of workshops and
Oh,
these
no.
sorts of
we
things,
don't
right?
want to do
So,
that.
We don't, yeah.
I think you need to look at how many parcels
absolutely.
and then make a decision.
Okay.
I agree. I tried to do that with Gridix and I was really struggling
And,
with
yeah,
it.
Gridix it's got the information in there, but getting to it is a little fuzzy for me
Yeah.
anyways. I know Kyla was in here earlier. She showed us how to use some of it because she got some tutelage from the Gridix folks. So, but yeah, the way our GIS is set up, it's a little hard to work with. We don't have a per parcel zoning designation. They're just sort of these polygons that overlay our parcel map. So getting down to that base data that you're talking about, Ms. Morano, is difficult to do. So it's an exercise, but I think it needs to be done, and I'll spend the time getting there.
So going back to that, Stephen, is developers have to send out things to the community that surrounds. We should be doing the same thing to these CR areas that we're trying to impact, to give these property owners the right to have some discussion.
It'll
In my
have to.
opinion.
No, it'll have to be done. It's
Yeah.
just us, if the county adopted all of this right now, there is still a map amendment process that would have to occur, and that could change during that process.
Okay, because we got Barbara, Margaret, me, Curtis, and three other
Right.
people.
I know, right?
You know, it's not people that are being impacted.
Yep.
I don't think there's very many 1 to 10.
Well, look,
Right, I don't think there's a
I'm
lot
gonna
of
look,
1 to 10.
and we can talk about it more and see what's maybe, a better way to approach this situation.
I actually have,
Please.
but there are very few, and they're all up in the western area of that wetland zone that's up top where Driftwood stuff is, to the east of that, you go around the east side of the bayou, that's where they're all at.
No,
Oh,
South
South
Walton.
Walton.
You talk about Alligator Point by
Like
me,
that,
or-
like that thumb that sticks out?
It's east of Bayou. So when you go all the way up Indian Woman, you turn left on, I'm sorry, you go all the way
Yeah,
up.
you're going to North Church and all that
You go
stuff
all the way
back
up
there.
CR, or 393, you turn left, and then all that stuff.
And I think most of that's locked in because developers put it in conservation years ago. So if you look and pull it up, you'll see that I don't even think it's gonna impact.
No.
So, okay, just since I know it's already after 6 here, so, do we have any other thoughts, concerns about the future land use element, I'm gonna take some of this stuff, I'm gonna retool, attempt to, and I think we're gonna need to have another workshop, at least on the future land use element, if nothing
Yeah,
else.
I
Are there
agree.
any real concerns, conversations that we need to have outside of the flu?
I have one too.
The north-south road, the road through the park.
Okay, okay.
Oh, okay, that's a good
Transportation.
one. I've got one more too.
it's in here.
So I will say this, right? So the EAR report initially spoke deliberately and specifically about some roadway locations, right? The Forest Road, those sort of things. So prior to the final acceptance of the report, we asked DPC to pull the specificity out of it.
Right.
Because, I mean, I don't think anybody can disagree that we need additional transportation, north, south, east, west. I mean, we're limited in a lot of ways. Now, should that be through through the forest? Probably not.
But you did pull it out, because I remember.
There's nothing
Yeah.
specific in the text amendments themselves that speak to where additional connections should be.
It's not in the text.
It's not in the text
I
amendments.
thought I saw an old copy, that's what happened.
Yeah,
That's
no,
fine.
there is reference to additional connection, but there's no specificity in where it should go or, how we get there. Yeah.
Okay, I have one more thing. I'm sorry, and
Oh,
I'm sorry to
don't be
add
sorry.
this. We just passed, DeSantis just signed SB 484, which is the data center law. And since
I'm
we're
not
doing.
familiar. What does that do?
Well, it is giving very specific local government. It's actually going to even override SB 180 in terms of data centers and what we can and as local governments say we want for our county. And I am really concerned about North Walton. They would be prime, and I think that we can do a few things in our comp plan specifically in order to address them. So I will send you some notes as to what I think we need language, we need some definitions, we need to make sure that we don't have, we have the ability now to be able to restrict it. We have the ability to restrict what's them in our county. And I want to make sure that since we're doing comp plan stuff, that is where we address it. We address it through definitions and infrastructure, and it is just in general. But he just signed it like a few days ago. It's a big thing in my industry. We're talking about it a lot. So there's a water resource protection language. And so there's just some things that I'll give you my notes, because I have some notes on it, and then take a look at that law, what we are allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And I actually even went down the rabbit hole on this really would, since it's a newer law, would come before SB 180. So we can do this now.
And let me tell you, Kristen is the best at researching going down rabbit holes.
Rabbit hole. It's bad.
So, I have to tell you, where I moved away from, data centers are overwhelming the area. They're tying up resources, they're using a large quantity of water, and it's not something we want to have Walton County overrun with.
I saw a video recently, and there was this gentleman got up at a city council meeting, and not to speak disparagingly about him, but I was judging him. He looked like a bum. But he got up and he spoke so eloquently and so succinctly about why the data center shouldn't go in this town. It was pretty impressive.
Everyone needs to do their research on
Yeah.
it, but it's not, there's not anybody, and there is a strategic way that they infiltrate an area, and once you allow one in, you are screwed. And so I want to make sure that we have language that protects Walton County so that we are not subject
Great.
to
Yeah,
that.
please send it to me. I'll see what we can do.
Right, anything else? Does anybody have anything? Oh,
The
just
TDR?
touched on it, but I think it's a good idea, having that in there. What are your concerns, Curtis?
I was curious if our discussion earlier about maximum density maybe that was, did that tie into the transfer density, saying you transfer density only up to this new maximum?
So, no, the only real language in here was just guiding the county to develop the program. So there's no real detail, but, you know, if we developed that program, I'm hoping we do, that we could speak to some of those.
It seems like our comp plan is defining the maximum, those numbers you talked about. If you don't increase them, this doesn't do it. You can't transfer density above what the maximum is.
That's true, yeah.
Right.
If it doesn't exist, you can't transfer it.
When I just read this, made me think about, we were just talking about maybe it's too high. You have a defined maximum, right? Yeah,
What
so
do you
if we
mean?
have a, let's just say we have low density residential 4 to 1, you're trying to do transfer density. Your comp plan says it's a maximum of 4 units per district. Does that override the other comp plan?
So, well, I mean, we would have to designate receiving areas for that density, and there would be limitations placed on that, and I'm assuming.
I'm
I'm not
just
tracking.
saying, if you have a defined maximum in the comp plan, are you overriding it with the other provisions as your transfer? It's no longer maximum.
Yes, I believe so.
Transfer
Let me,
But I don't think a 4 to 1, you're gonna be transferring that density. I think it's more, right, I'm thinking like small neighborhood. Let's say there's 12 units per acre. And because of floodplain or wetlands or whatever else may be on that parcel, that would be an opportunity to maybe transfer, you know, half of that density to somewhere else. So instead of 12 units being built on that acre, they're only building 6, and another parcel is going to take their extra density. And yet the property owner is going to be made financially whole for that.
So we're gonna limit that to certain areas, because I see it being pulled from the north down to the south.
Can't
And
be.
so if we don't limit what we're doing, and I had that conversation with Margaret, because, you know, we were discussing transfer density rights. I said, we're gonna end up with things you don't want
Right.
if we don't figure out where to put those receiving areas.
Right, so that's a big part of that program, right? You have to designate specifically where you can move density out of and where you move it to or intensity,
Exactly.
right? So it's gonna be a process. It's not just gonna
Right.
be like, we have this program now.
Right,
It's- yeah.
exactly.
My whole question though is saying we have a table defining maximum.
Right.
Can the transfer override the maximum?
So you mean like, so if one of the receiving areas had a base density of 4, and then we wanted to put 10 more units an acre on that, like, would we be able to?
Yeah, because it's defined in the comp plan as a maximum in the table, can you override that?
That's something we'd have to explore.
I
but, yeah.
think that is the intention of transfer of density rights, but then that goes back to David's point of, and Stephen,
Yeah, we may
where
have
you're
to-
transferring from and where you're transferring to. But yes, then that would override
Yeah.
the current zoning for that.
We'd have to
parcel.
probably establish a max density for the different receiving areas.
Yeah.
And then if we needed to get to a place where we added some language in the comp plan to address that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
concept.
think you would transfer density from a 12-unit per acre parcel to a low-density parcel.
Well, I'll say there's a couple situations, I think, specifically, there's a T&D piece on the, maybe it's your piece. I think there may be another one too, but, so if there's too much wetlands and, you know, that would be a prime example where you would
Exactly.
want to move that density into a better location.
Right.
So we would have to ensure that wherever it's moving to, we'd be able to.
Right,
So
that's not overrun with wetlands or in a
If you go to the
floodplain.
sector-
Right.
Sector map, I would think, too, to look at.
That would be
for the
part of
growth.
that, absolutely.
I
Right.
just wanna make sure that we weren't handcuffing ourselves with a table, it's defining maximum, and then over here, you're trying to come up with
Right. It'll have to be spelled out very specifically.
Yeah, that'll be a pretty heavy lift, I think.
Sorry.
Okay, so I think I've got a pretty good understanding of some of the stuff I need to work on here. Again, I just want to make sure that if there's any other concerns, comments outside of the flu, You
My
know,
stuff's been addressed.
Okay, okay. Do we want to talk about setting up another workshop now, or do you just want me to bring it back when kind of a revision is ready?
What do you want to do? I mean,
well-
because if we set up another workshop, then that
That-
sets a
that-
deadline.
Well, that's.
Good and
probab-
bad.
There's a, yeah, if I don't have one, I'm gonna keep kind of putting it to the edge of my plate. If I
Yeah.
do, then I'll keep it on. So what if we set it, I don't have a calendar. That's, all right. I'll bring it back. I'll keep it on my plate. I'll bring it back.
Okay.
We'll set up another, and
I
I
mean,
think
because
what
we
we
could
need
do
to.
that via email. You could email the
Right,
planning commission
and then we'll
members
advertise.
Yes,
and yeah,
exactly.
It doesn't have to necessarily be announced by you, but we'll go through that process when we get there.
Okay,
All right?
sounds good.
All right. Anything else?
Anything else? If not, we're done.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everybody.
everybody.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Curtis.
Yeah,
Thank you, Barbara.
X-ray or the cop.
that's so funny. Funny, not funny, when we showed up with that.
Those data centers are